Let me tell you something strange about our world today. People are more visible than ever, yet they feel more invisible than ever. We post, we share, we perform, but deep down, most of us are starving for something quieter, something real. Isn't it ironic that in the age of connection, silence has become rebellion? The constant hum of validation addiction and social media psychology has turned attention into currency and invisibility into a kind of psychological freedom. Think about it. When was the last time you did something without announcing it online? The last time you sat in silence without reaching for your phone, chasing that little dopamine hit? We live in a performance society where self-worth is measured by views, likes, and follows, where being unseen feels like failure. But what if that feeling isn't loss, but liberation? What if the real power lies not in being seen, but in not needing to be? Because maybe, just maybe, the psychology of silence isn't about disappearing. It's about detaching from the need for validation, about finding self-acceptance in the shadows of a world obsessed with the spotlight. And the question we'll explore today is this: what happens when you stop needing to be seen and start truly seeing yourself? The hidden cost of constant visibility. In today's attention economy, people confuse visibility with value. The more we post, the more we believe we exist, as if self-worth were tied to the number of eyes watching. It's a silent trap, where the psychology of attention and the need for validation blend into a kind of performance pressure that never ends. Many don't realize it, but this cycle erodes self-perception and feeds social comparison. The more we chase approval, the less we recognize our authentic self, until we become strangers to our own reflection. Picture someone scrolling late at night, checking who viewed their story. The moment of satisfaction is quick, a dopamine flicker that vanishes just as fast. This constant loop of validation addiction keeps the ego hungry and the mind restless. In the quiet spaces, anxiety grows, fear of judgment whispering, "If they don't see me, do I still matter?" It's a cruel question born from overexposure psychology, one that disconnects us from presence and mindfulness. We begin performing even when nobody's watching. But here's the twist. Being unseen doesn't mean being insignificant. It might actually be the first step toward emotional independence and self-validation. When someone practices digital minimalism, stepping back from the noise, they rediscover inner peace and psychological freedom. That stillness allows self-awareness to grow, letting them see who they are beyond the online identity they've built. And that quiet realization opens the door to something deeper: the power of being unseen. There's a strange kind of strength in being invisible, not the invisibility of loneliness, but the kind that comes from psychological detachment, from no longer needing the world's applause to feel alive. When someone embraces solitude psychology, they stop chasing noise and start hearing themselves. That's where self-awareness begins to bloom. In the silence, in the moments when nobody's watching, and the ego no longer has an audience to impress. The power of silence becomes a mirror that shows what's real beneath the mask. You see, in the psychology of authenticity, the absence of attention isn't emptiness, it's space. It's room for mindfulness and presence to grow stronger than the urge to perform. Picture an introvert who once felt invisible, now walking through life with quiet confidence, no longer trapped by the fear of judgment. They've realized something profound: presence over performance. They've stopped needing to be seen to feel seen, because self-acceptance replaced external approval. And when that happens, a shift occurs. You begin to see how social media psychology has trained minds to equate noise with meaning and silence with failure. But the truth is the opposite. Silence is where clarity lives. In stillness, you find mental clarity, inner peace, and the freedom to exist without explanation. Yet this discovery leads to another question. If silence gives us strength, why do we still crave the spotlight so much? The illusion of validation. Here's where things get tricky. The mind loves approval. Every like, comment, and share is a tiny burst of dopamine, teaching the brain to associate attention with happiness. It's the psychology of validation addiction, and it's everywhere. But this constant craving keeps people in a performance loop, trading authenticity for applause. They become addicted to being seen, even if it means losing touch with who they are. Over time, this leads to emotional exhaustion and a distorted self-image built on the opinions of strangers. Think about it. How many times have you seen someone delete a post because it didn't get enough likes? That's self-worth being negotiated by an algorithm. This is where authenticity psychology and self-perception collide, where people perform versions of themselves that are marketable but not meaningful. They start living as their online identity, a carefully filtered version that looks confident but feels hollow. It's the silent cost of overexposure psychology, where the applause feels good, but the silence feels unbearable. Yet, there's hope. The moment one recognizes this illusion, they can begin to detach from validation and find psychological freedom. They can practice mindful living, doing things for their own fulfillment, not for digital approval. Try it. Share less. Observe more. Read in silence. Walk without headphones. Write thoughts you'll never post. It's in those unseen moments that true self-esteem begins to rebuild, though this awareness brings another challenge. What happens when the ego resists losing its favorite drug? Attention? The ego's fear of disappearing. The ego doesn't like quiet. It thrives on performance pressure, on the constant reminder that others are watching. The moment we step back, it panics, whispering fears of being forgotten, unseen, irrelevant. That's the fear of judgment in disguise, the part of our identity tied to applause. In existential psychology, this fear is deeply rooted in the need to matter. But what the ego doesn't understand is that being unseen doesn't erase existence. It refines it. It transforms self-perception into something more grounded, more peaceful. Imagine someone who's been online for years, constantly sharing, posting, updating, then suddenly they stop. At first it feels strange, even wrong. That's dopamine withdrawal, the detox of attention. But as days pass, a curious thing happens. Their mind becomes quieter. They notice details they used to miss. Meals taste better, silence feels lighter, and the constant mental chatter fades. That's when introspection starts. When you begin to experience mindfulness and presence without needing an audience to validate it. And here lies the paradox. Once the ego stops screaming for recognition, confidence grows naturally. This is the birth of quiet confidence, a kind of psychological detachment that doesn't depend on comparison or approval. The ego fears disappearing, but in that disappearance lies rebirth. Yet this inner rebirth leads to the final insight. Maybe the people who seem to vanish from the noise aren't lost at all. Maybe they're the ones who finally found themselves. There's a profound peace that comes when you stop needing to perform. When you no longer measure self-worth by external validation, something inside relaxes. The mind unclenches. The psychology of silence takes root, and solitude transforms from loneliness into empowerment. In this space, mental clarity returns, the noise fades, and life slows down just enough for self-awareness to deepen. This is psychological freedom, not having to explain, prove, or display who you are, simply being. Those who reach this point often describe it as a kind of inner peace that feels unfamiliar at first, almost too quiet. But that quiet is gold. It's where emotional independence is born, where self-validation replaces digital applause. You begin to enjoy your own company again. Books, music, walks, reflection. These small acts of mindful living become sacred. The attention once spent on others' opinions turns inward, fueling growth and creativity that doesn't need an audience to be real. And perhaps that's the great paradox of authenticity psychology, that when you stop needing to be seen, you start to see life with new eyes. You notice the beauty in stillness, the joy in simplicity, the freedom and detachment from validation. Being unseen becomes not a weakness, but a choice, a rebellion against a world addicted to attention. And it leaves us with one final question to ponder. If silence is the new luxury, how will you choose to live in it? So now that you've seen the power of being unseen, what will you do with it? Will you keep chasing the noise or dare to sit in silence long enough to hear your own truth? The psychology of silence isn't about vanishing. It's about remembering who you are without performance. When you detach from the need for validation, your mind clears, your energy stabilizes, and your sense of self finally breathes. That's not just confidence, that's liberation. Ask yourself, when was the last time you felt peace without a post, pride without applause, or joy without witnesses? These aren't small questions. They're the doorway to self-awareness and mindful living. If you can learn to find worth in solitude, to find joy in quiet confidence, you'll discover the kind of freedom no algorithm can offer. This is the real psychology of attention. Attention turned inward, not outward. So, if this message resonated with you, if you're ready to explore more about authenticity, ego, and the art of mindful living, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. Let's keep learning together, growing quietly, and finding power in presence over performance. Because sometimes, not needing to be seen is the clearest way to truly exist.